At 3 a.m., my sister took my car keys while I was asleep. By morning, my brand new SUV was gone, crashed during a weekend trip with her friends. When she returned, Mom said, "Stop blaming her, she would never do that." I just smiled, because the car she drove off with actually Mom's. I, 32M, woke up at 8 in the morning to find my car keys missing from the dresser. They were always there, right next to my wallet and phone. Always. My heart started pounding before my brain could catch up to what was happening. The SUV was gone from the driveway. Mom's brand new silver SUV that she'd bought just 3 weeks ago, the one she'd been showing off to the entire neighborhood. The one she'd specifically told me I could park in front of the house because my older sedan was in the shop. She'd handed me the keys last night, told me to move it closer to the garage in the morning. My sister had taken my keys. She'd taken what she thought was my car. I stood there in my boxers and t-shirt, staring at the empty spot where a $40,000 vehicle had been parked 6 hours ago. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number with a photo attachment. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. The SUV was wrapped around a telephone pole, the entire front end accordioned into itself. The hood was crumpled like paper. Airbags deployed. Shattered glass everywhere. Another text came through. It was from my sister's friend, someone I'd met maybe twice. She was asking if my sister had told me about the accident yet, saying they were all okay, but the car was totaled. She said they'd gone to the lake, to some party 2 hours away. She said my sister had been drinking, but swore she was fine to drive back. She said it happened around 5 in the morning on some back road. I screenshot everything. Mom came downstairs 20 minutes later, her coffee mug in hand, humming something. She saw me standing in the living room, phone in hand, and asked what was wrong. I told her the SUV was gone. I watched her face change, watched confusion turn to concern turn to panic. She rushed to the window, looked outside, turned back to me with wide eyes. I showed her the photos. She grabbed the phone from my hands, stared at the wreckage, brought her hand to her mouth. She asked me what happened, her voice shaking. I explained calmly that my sister had taken my keys while I was asleep, thinking she was taking my car, and had driven her friends to the lake. I explained that she'd crashed it coming back. Mom sat down heavily on the couch. She stared at the photo for a long time, then looked up at me and asked if I was sure. I told her I was sure. I told her my sister's friend had sent me the photos. I told her my keys were missing from my dresser and the car was missing from the driveway. She shook her head slowly, then faster. She said my sister wouldn't do that. She said there must be some mistake. She said maybe someone stole the car, maybe I'd moved it and forgotten. Her voice got louder with each sentence. I just stood there and let her spiral. My sister came home 4 hours later. I heard her key in the door, heard her footsteps in the hallway. She looked rough, makeup smeared, clothes wrinkled, a small cut on her forehead. Mom jumped up from the couch where she'd been sitting in silence and rushed to her. Mom asked her what happened, where she'd been, if she was okay. My sister glanced at me, then back at Mom. She said she'd stayed at a friend's house. She said she'd borrowed a car to get there. She didn't mention the crash. I held up my phone with the photo on the screen. Her face went white. She started stammering, saying it wasn't what it looked like. Mom turned to her and asked what was going on. My sister looked between us, and I could see her brain working, see her trying to find an angle. She told Mom that I'd given her permission to borrow my car. She said I'd told her it was fine, that I'd left the keys out for her. She said the crash wasn't her fault, that someone had run her off the road. She started crying, big theatrical sobs, saying she'd been so scared and traumatized. Mom turned to me with this look on her face, this accusing look. She asked me if I'd given my sister permission. I said no. I said I'd been asleep. I said she'd taken my keys from my dresser without asking. My sister shouted that I was lying. She said I was trying to get her in trouble. She said I'd always been jealous of her, always trying to make her look bad. Mom's expression softened as she looked at my sister, and I knew exactly where this was going. Mom said maybe there was a misunderstanding. She said accidents happen. She said the important thing was that my sister was safe. She turned to me and said I needed to stop blaming my sister, that she would never steal from me. I smiled. Mom asked me what was funny. I told her nothing was funny. I told her I was just glad we'd cleared everything up. My sister looked confused, uncertain. She asked what I meant. I said I meant that she'd borrowed a car without permission, crashed it, lied about it, and now Mom was defending her. Mom's face flushed. She said I was being cruel. She said my sister had been through a trauma. She said I needed to be more understanding. I nodded slowly and told her she was absolutely right. I told her my sister had been through something terrible and we should all be supportive. Then I asked Mom if she wanted to call the insurance company or if she wanted me to do it. The room went silent. Mom asked what I meant. I told her that we needed to file a claim for her SUV. I watched understanding dawn on her face, watched it drain of color. She asked me what I was talking about. I reminded her that she'd given me her keys last night and asked me to move her SUV in the morning. I reminded her that my car was in the shop. I reminded her that the only vehicle in the driveway last night had been hers. My sister made a choking sound. Mom stood up, grabbed my phone again, stared at the photo. Her hands were shaking. She asked me if I was saying that was her car in the picture. I told her it was. I told her my sister had taken my keys, which had Mom's car key on the ring, and had driven off with her brand new SUV. Mom turned to my sister with an expression I'd never seen before. My sister backed up, started talking fast. She said she didn't know, said she thought it was my car, said it was dark and she couldn't tell. She said it was an honest mistake. Mom asked her why she'd taken any car without permission. She asked her why she'd been drinking and driving. She asked her why she'd lied about all of it. My sister just stood there crying, saying she was sorry, saying she'd panicked. Mom sat back down. She put her head in her hands. She asked my sister if she understood what she'd done. She asked if she understood that the car was totaled. She asked if she understood that insurance might not cover it because she wasn't listed as a driver and she'd been drinking. My sister said she was sorry over and over. Mom didn't respond. She just sat there with her head in her hands. I left the room and went upstairs. I could hear them arguing below, could hear my sister's voice getting higher and more desperate, could hear Mom's voice getting colder. I lay on my bed and waited. An hour later, Mom knocked on my door. She came in and sat on the edge of my bed. She looked like she'd aged 10 years. She told me she was sorry. She told me she should have believed me. She told me she didn't know what to do. I told her it wasn't my problem to solve. I told her I wasn't the one who'd stolen a car and crashed it. I told her I wasn't the one who'd been defending a thief and a liar. She flinched at that, but didn't argue. She asked me what she should do. I told her that was up to her. I told her I'd be happy to provide my statement to the police if she wanted to file a report. I told her I'd be happy to provide my statement to the insurance company. I told her I had screenshots of all the messages from my sister's friend. Mom asked me if I was really going to let them arrest my sister. I told her I wasn't going to let them do anything. I told her that decisions had consequences and my sister had made her choices. I asked her if she remembered all the times she'd taken my sister's side, all the times she'd told me I was being too harsh, all the times she'd made excuses. She didn't answer. Update 1. The insurance company rejected the claim. They said my sister wasn't authorized to drive the vehicle, that she'd been intoxicated, and that the policy didn't cover theft by family members. Mom was on the phone with them for 3 hours, arguing, begging, threatening to switch companies. They didn't budge. Mom sat at the kitchen table with her laptop and a pile of papers, trying to figure out how she was going to pay for a new car. She'd put a significant down payment on the SUV and still owed $28,000. The car was worth nothing now except scrap metal. My sister stayed in her room for 2 days. When she finally came out, she tried to apologize to Mom. She said she'd get a job and pay her back. She said it would take time, but she'd make it right. Mom just looked at her and told her that at minimum wage, working full-time, it would take her years to pay back $28,000 plus the cost of a new vehicle. My sister started crying again. She said she didn't know what else to say. Mom told her that maybe she should have thought about that before she stole a car. I stayed out of it. I went to work, came home, made dinner for myself, and ignored the tension in the house. My sister tried to talk to me once, cornered me in the hallway, and asked if I was happy now. I told her I wasn't happy or unhappy. I told her I was just watching consequences play out. She called me cruel. She said I could fix this if I wanted to, that I could tell Mom it was a misunderstanding, that I could help smooth things over. I asked her why I would do that. She said because we were family. I told her that family doesn't steal from each other, doesn't lie to each other, and doesn't expect the victim to fix the mess. She walked away. 3 days after the crash, Mom told my sister she needed to move out. Not immediately, but soon. She said she couldn't live with someone she didn't trust. She said she needed space to figure out her own life. My sister was shocked, said Mom couldn't be serious. Mom told her she was completely serious. My sister turned to me, asked if I was going to let this happen. I told her it wasn't my decision. She screamed that I'd turned Mom against her. I reminded her that she'd done that herself by stealing a $40,000 car and totaling it. Mom told her to pack her things. Update 2. My sister moved in with the friend who'd sent me the crash photos. Apparently that friendship didn't last long because 2 weeks later she was calling Mom asking if she could come back home. Mom said no. My sister said she had nowhere else to go. Mom suggested she figure it out the way adults do. I was there for that phone call. Mom's voice was steady, calm, final. When she hung up, she sat at the table for a long time. Then she asked me if she was being too harsh. I told her I couldn't answer that. I told her only she knew what she could live with. She asked me if I forgave my sister. I told her there was nothing to forgive because my sister hadn't wronged me. I told her the person she wronged was sitting right here. Mom nodded slowly and didn't bring it up again. Mom bought a used sedan with cash from her savings. It was practical, reliable, nothing flashy. She told me she was done trying to impress people. She told me she was done making excuses for people who didn't respect her. I told her that sounded like a good plan. My sister kept calling. Mom stopped answering. Eventually, the calls became texts, long rambling apologies mixed with accusations. Mom deleted them without reading them all the way through. She told me she couldn't handle the emotional manipulation anymore. I got my car back from the shop. It ran fine, looked fine, cost me $800 in repairs. I parked it in the driveway where Mom's SUV used to be. Every time I saw it there, I thought about that morning, about the empty space, about the look on Mom's face when she realized what had happened. One night Mom asked me how I'd known. She asked me how I'd known it was her car and not mine. I told her I'd known because my keys had my car's key fob on them and hers had a different brand. I told her I'd known because I'd seen her SUV in the driveway when I went to bed. I told her I'd known because my sister had a pattern of taking things that didn't belong to her and assuming she'd get away with it. Mom asked me why I'd smiled. She asked me why I'd smiled when she told me to stop blaming my sister. I told her I'd smiled because I'd known that in about 30 seconds her entire worldview was going to flip. I told her I'd smiled because for once, my sister wasn't going to get away with it. Mom said she didn't know whether to thank me or be angry with me. I told her she could be both. I told her I'd learned a long time ago that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone face the consequences of their actions. She asked me if I thought my sister would ever change. I told her I didn't know. I told her that change required acknowledgement of wrongdoing and genuine remorse, not just regret at getting caught. I told her I hadn't seen either of those things yet. Update 3. 6 months went by. Mom settled into her new routine, her new car, her new boundaries. She seemed lighter somehow, less stressed. She told me she hadn't realized how much energy she'd been spending on managing my sister's chaos. My sister got a job at a retail store. She posted about it on social media like it was a huge accomplishment. Mom didn't comment or like the post. I didn't either. Then one day my sister showed up at the house. She didn't call first, just appeared on the doorstep on a Saturday morning. Mom answered the door, and I heard their voices from upstairs. My sister was asking to come in, asking to talk. Mom told her they could talk on the porch. I came downstairs and stood in the doorway where I could hear, but not be seen. My sister was saying she'd been in therapy. She was saying she'd realized she had problems with boundaries and responsibility. She was saying she wanted to make amends. Mom asked her what that meant. My sister said she wanted to pay back the money. She said she'd been saving, that she had about $1,500 set aside. She said it would take her a long time, but she was committed. Mom was quiet for a moment. Then she asked my sister if she understood why she'd asked her to move out. My sister said yes. She said she understood that she'd violated Mom's trust. She said she understood that actions have consequences. Mom asked her if she was only saying that because her therapist told her to. My sister hesitated, then said she didn't know. She said maybe at first, but that over time she'd started to actually understand it. She said she'd had to face a lot of things about herself that she didn't like. Mom told her that was good. She told her she was glad my sister was working on herself. Then she told her she wasn't ready to let her back into her life yet. My sister's voice cracked. She asked when Mom would be ready. Mom said she didn't know. My sister asked if she could at least see me. Mom called me to the door. I stepped out onto the porch and looked at my sister. She looked different, older maybe, tired. She told me she was sorry. She told me she knew I wasn't the one she'd wronged, but that she'd treated me badly too. She said she'd always resented me for being the responsible one, for making her look bad by comparison. I told her I'd never tried to make her look bad. I told her she'd done that on her own. She nodded and said she knew that now. She asked if I could forgive her. I told her forgiveness wasn't something I could give or withhold for something she'd done to Mom. I told her if she wanted to make things right, she needed to keep doing what she was doing: therapy, work, accountability. I told her maybe eventually Mom would be ready to talk. She asked if I would help convince Mom. I told her no. I told her this was between them and I wasn't going to interfere. She looked disappointed but nodded. She left after that. Mom and I went back inside and she asked me what I thought. I told her it was her decision. She said she knew that, but she valued my opinion. I told her that my sister seemed different, but that time would tell if the change was real or just another manipulation. Mom said that was fair. Another 3 months passed. My sister sent Mom a check every month, $250, like clockwork. She included a short note each time, nothing dramatic, just an update on her life and a reiteration that she was working on being better. Mom cashed the checks and put the money in a separate account. She told me she wasn't sure what she'd do with it yet. She said part of her wanted to send it back, to not accept anything from my sister. Another part of her thought that letting my sister make payments was part of holding her accountable. I told her both were valid choices. Eventually, Mom invited my sister over for coffee. Just coffee, just talking. My sister came, and they sat in the kitchen for 2 hours. I stayed upstairs. When my sister left, Mom came to my room and told me it had gone well. She said they'd talked about a lot of things, about the past, about patterns, about expectations. I asked her if she was going to let my sister move back in. She said absolutely not. She said boundaries were important and she'd finally learned to maintain them. But she said she thought maybe they could rebuild some kind of relationship, slowly, carefully. I told her that was her choice to make. Mom asked me if I'd ever forgive my sister for what she'd put her through. I told her I was never angry at my sister on my own behalf. I told her I was angry at the pattern, angry at the enabling, angry at being dismissed every time I tried to point out the problems. Mom said she understood. She said she was sorry for all the times she defended my sister when she shouldn't have. She said she was sorry for making me feel like the problem when I was just trying to tell the truth. I told her I appreciated that. The last time I saw my sister was at Mom's birthday dinner. Mom had invited her, had told me in advance, so I wouldn't be surprised. The dinner was cordial, polite, distant. My sister didn't ask for special treatment. She didn't make excuses. She wished Mom happy birthday, gave her a small gift, and left after an appropriate amount of time. Mom seemed satisfied with that. She told me later that she didn't know if they'd ever be close again, but that she thought they could at least be civil. She said that was enough for now. I agreed. Sometimes I still think about that morning, standing in my boxers staring at the empty driveway. I think about the moment Mom realized what had happened, the moment my sister's face went white, the moment everything changed. I think about how one decision, one theft, one lie had unraveled years of enabling and dysfunction. I don't regret smiling. I don't regret letting it play out. Some lessons can only be learned through consequences, and some patterns can only be broken when the cost becomes too high to ignore. My sister learned. Mom learned. And I learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for the people you love is refuse to protect them from reality. If you like this story, please like this video and subscribe us for more such real-life-based stories. Thanks in advance.